All right, I want to do a talk on the law of diffusion of innovation and how it applies to funding, which very few people understand or even talk about. Well, let me explain the law of diffusion of innovation. Basically, it states this, and you've always seen the bell curve, right? And you may have heard of something called the chasm. The law basically states this, is that the society is made up of probably less than 2.5% of society are innovators. The next 13% are what's known as early adapters, late adapters, known as the early majority, late majority, and finally the laggards. And the breakup is basically 2.5%, 13%, then it goes to 35%, 35%, and laggards make up 16% of the population. Now, the same graph can be applied to funding for innovation. And this is why it's so hard and why so few innovators actually become successful. Less than 1% of innovators, so the 2.5% are, if you think of the 2.5% are the innovators, right? Less than 1% of those individuals, far less than 1%, probably globally 0.1% of those actually get their startups going, right? Their ideas, in play. Most of them basically do not, and their innovation comes significantly later. To give you some examples, I mean, the fax machine was invented in 1900, and yet it didn't come along until much later. Another example of this would be the steam engine. The steam engine was invented in, actually the 1400s. It didn't even come about until the 1700s. So, or you can even look at people like Mozart. Mozart music was scoffed at by by his period. I mean, his genius wasn't actually understood till years after his death. Another example is Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, this guy, was a genius, and yet his innovations did not really take shape until, literally hundreds of years later. And not only that, he was always at the mercy of some sort of funder, right? And he moved from camp to camp trying to find funders to innovate, to fund him, right? The same thing goes for Archimedes. The same thing goes for, painters. If you think of Da Vinci, and even what's his name? I can't think of his name. Pablo Picasso, right? Pablo Picasso is a very fine example. His art wasn't understood, and you can even look at a lot of the other. This tradition is repeated. Why? Again, because success for your innovation is money, the right people, the right market. Success equals access to funds, the right people, the right market conditions. And and one of my favorite examples of this would be Tesla. Tesla has probably filed more patents than anyone else. I believe he's filed more patents than Alexander Bell in his life. And Alexander Bell and him existed. Alexander Bell had access to what? To funds, to investors. Tesla did not. He was regarded somewhat of a crazy guy, and Bell did everything in his power to basically destroy Tesla, and he did. Even though his invention, right, of the alternating current, it's his invention, fuels everything today. His current fuels everything. So you're listening to this talk on Tesla's invention, all right? The alternating current. Probably the most important invention of the modern period is this alternating current. Alexander Bell believed in current, one directional current, not alternating. So it's very important for us to understand the scope of innovation, and ultimately the law of what I call the law of funding innovation follows the same breakdown, where less than 2% of investors out there, right, who are known as angels, will fund projects. Now the problem is that they fund projects on people that they know, right? Investors invest in people, right? They don't invest in ideas, they invest in people. And ultimately, it is these individuals that will bring about funding. And if you don't have people on your team that have access to, to these 2.5%, then you're not going to see your innovation happening. So of the group of the 1%, right? So if 1%, let's look at it this way: of 1% of investors out there, less than 2.5% are going to fund ideas and people that they don't know, or that stage of ideas. And then of that, the next stage is 13% going to fund once the idea gets to a certain stage. So it's the whole chicken, the egg, and the whole, the challenge there. And this specifically is part of the problem that I'm seeking to disrupt by using this ubiquitous platform called the Open Startup for helping to launch successful, projects into early stage seeded startups. Thanks.